The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We're back with another Thursday edition of Anime Thursdays on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. Once again, we are talking all things anime as we do on these Thursday shows. Occasionally we mix in some other topics on our Thursdays, and we'll be doing that a little more over the next few weeks as we get toward the holiday season, Christmas coming up. I think in a future episode, we're going to have a kind of a buyer's guide of things that you might want to pick up this holiday season when things are on sale. So we'll be doing that in the coming weeks. But we've got more music today. We're going to play more of our favorite anime themes in the second half of this show. If you're listening on Twitch or on the Twitch VOD, if you're on YouTube or our podcast network, you're not going to get that, obviously, due to the copyright stuff, but always join us live on Twitch, and you're sure to get all of that content. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. Busy times, for sure, as we head toward the end of the year. Just finished Hell's Paradise. Great show. Definitely one of the best ones from last year. I would encourage everyone to check that out. I just dropped my top anime openings of fall today. I'm looking to finish up the yearly list within the next week or so, and also a ranking list of the openings from the shows I watched over the course of 2024. I got 35 openings there. I'll be ranking those and getting that out as well.
Nice. And we'll definitely take a look at that yearly list when that one is wrapped up and probably review that on the podcast as well. But a lot of stuff on Mike's YouTube channel. Of course, you can check that out. And you can also check that out for his music stuff, basically all the playlist for our weekly music show that we do every Sunday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. And of course, we've got another episode of that coming up this Sunday, the music of November the 22nd, I believe, this week.
Yep.
So definitely join us for that. But we've got anime to talk about tonight, and we're going to be getting into anime news first. And of course, it would not be our Thursday podcast if we didn't have some sort of Ohayocon news. So we're going to lead off with that and kind of get that out of the way to start with. Of course, Ohayocon's coming right around the corner, a little over a month away in Dayton this year. We have talked pretty extensively on the podcast about all the challenges involved with Ohayocon, the move from Columbus, the new convention staff that is running the convention, the ownership situation, and it just seems like every time we take a few weeks off from talking about it, something new happens and we have to talk about it again. And this time it was a series of Facebook posts that came up this week. The first one, which was posted and then deleted, basically stated again that about the permanent departure of Melissa Phelps, the former convention planner who owns the convention, and basically made it sound like this was the end and she was gone. This is not the first time they've made this statement. And of course, it was met with understandable skepticism in the comments, lots of questions, people doing their own research, finding that she still has registration for both the convention and the CESI group that was supposedly disbanded, may still be disbanded. I don't know. I think that's really kind of up in the air. That post was eventually deleted off of both the Ohayocon and Ohayocon 2025 Facebook page. Kind of thought that might be the end of it for our podcast, but then more comments today, basically with them saying that she's not going to be management and that she's signing ownership of the convention over to somebody else. They didn't say who that person is. They didn't say
you.
Could be. Maybe I might be the new owner of Ohayocon. That would be breaking news, and we'll certainly break that on the podcast if it happens. But no, I will not be the owner of Ohayocon. But whoever it is, they're supposedly going to announce it. And of course, more research showed up in that thread. People again pointing out kind of the same things. It's just a total mess, and there's a lot to kind of break down again. We've talked about it, and again, I do want to just kind of make it clear off the top that we've attended Ohayocon for many, many years. Even when it was just kind of so-so, like it was our local con, it was a way to break up the winter. We always found a way to have a good time. Some of the fan groups stopped coming, and that really kind of made it less attractive for us to go because those were the big panels that we attended. But otherwise, we really don't have any dog in the fight. More anime conventions is always a good thing. We certainly were hoping that Ohayocon would make it through this in some form or fashion, probably with some changes. Obviously, the SakaiCon people are working on their own convention, which is coming up later in spring or late winter, early spring. So when we discuss this, again, it really isn't, I don't know Melissa. I have no positive or negative feelings about her other than just the comments that I've read and the thoughts that other people have had. But what I do know, and I'll certainly jump to Mike to get his thoughts on this as well, is the whole thing has just been a total mess from the get-go. The Zoom calls that they didn't even know how to record properly, the fact that they didn't get them up on the website, the fact there was at least one guest announced in those Zoom calls that still hasn't been announced for the convention. The fact that in an effort for transparency, it feels like we've just constantly be going around in circles, not really saying anything. They announced an AMV contest. They didn't even call an AMV contest for some reason, which is so weird.
The interesting thing about that is it looks like from both the information on how to enter the contest and just from similar contests at other conventions, it's people from Youmacon that are running that.
Oh, interesting.
Because they have their own like Youmacon fan, whatever the term was, fan art, something or other.
Gotcha. Isn't that another convention that's been dealing with issues?
Oh, they had issues recently as well. So it's kind of interesting.
That is interesting. But anyway, like everything about this, it's like poster posted, then they're taken down. Then, there are multiple announcements about Melissa leaving, and then there's nothing concrete. And again, because I don't have any issue with her, there is clearly a contingent of people that do, whether they've had direct issues with her over the years or people they know have had direct issues with her. Her involvement in this convention to a non-zero size of the fan base is a big deal. And the fact they've been so flippant about whether she is or isn't involved, whether she's owning it or not owning it, whether it's profit or non-profit, this whole rigmarole is the last thing Ohayocon needed when it was already struggling after the pandemic with all the issues they had, the SakaiCon people breaking away, moving to Dayton to a lesser convention center with poor hotel access. It's amazing. I mean, you told me a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if this is a step too far, but you still kind of wonder whether Ohiocon's going to happen at all or not, and how many badges have they sold for this? It's clearly just a total mess. Your thoughts on all of that, I guess.
Yeah, I guess first, you kind of wonder now if that guest that they announced on the Zoom call, they haven't officially announced, if that wasn't somehow contingent upon badge sales that they're not getting.
Could be.
And maybe that's just not a viable option anymore either. From all accounts, we weren't there, but by all accounts that we've heard, Ohayocon 2024 was rough.
Yeah.
It was not very heavily attended, likely lost money. The second that ended, there needed to be a serious conversation as far as where do we go from here?
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? And it starts with, is Melissa going to stay on or not? Once you decide that she is, which it seemed like initially that was the plan.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to come out and say that. She needs to come out and say, look, things happened. Everyone made mistakes, myself included. I'm going to do better. We're going to work to rebuild this thing. And I'm going to work at the things I need to improve upon, which seem to be both delegation, managing people perhaps, and just how you treat the staff that ultimately are working because they love the convention. They're not getting anything of material value that justifies them being there besides just involvement in something they love. I think they could have started at that point, and you won't win everyone back over. That's fine. But at this rate, you're just going to lose more and more people when you drag your feet on this. You eventually announce this thing. You kind of dance around the subject of whether you're going to stay or not. You keep using the term step away, which doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
You put people in charge who claim to want to be super transparent, and they're going to have these Zoom calls, and they're going to engage with the community.
They had one Zoom call.
They had the one Zoom call. That hasn't happened since. And instead we have Facebook comments being deleted. answers not being given, the ball getting kicked down the road. There was a way that they could have mitigated a lot of this, I think, and it didn't happen that way.
The first mistake they made was not bringing in a PR person in February or March of last year and saying, okay, what do we need to do to fix this?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of situation, we're in a mess. And the thing is, if she was going to remain involved with the convention, the people that broke away of the Sakai Guild were probably never coming back.
Yeah.
And again, that's okay. Like, it's okay to have a disagreement, an apology would have been nice instead of, for a while we heard rumors of threats of lawsuits. Instead, there's still talk about somebody running off with a bunch of money that nothing has come of that, or at least we haven't heard any more of that. We've heard stories from vendors about the increased cost it's showing at the new Ohayocon this year compared to last year.
Yeah.
At a subpar location with probably less people attending. And that doesn't even count the fact that you kind of screwed over the vendors last year because this whole mess caused lower attendance and they didn't make their money last year.
Yeah.
What you could have done is said, hey, everybody who was a vendor at Ohayocon 2024 can come back to 2025 for $50, $100 less than what you paid in 2024 as an apology. We messed up. We're going to try to make it right. Again, a lot of this could have been fixed with apologies and said, hey, because people make mistakes, things happen. And sometimes when you're in this kind of industry, sometimes you apologize for things you're not even really sorry for because it's the right thing to do to get everybody past it and move on.
I mean, that comes with a leadership role in any facet.
Yeah, for sure. And again, you apologize knowing that there will be people that will never accept your apology.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But you can't begin to move on beyond it without admitting some mistakes were made, because that's very clear. Even not knowing all the details or not even believing everything that comes from both sides, people messed up. You don't get to this point without that. You don't leave a site like the Columbus Convention Center to go to Dayton if something didn't get screwed up along the way. So the whole thing is sad, really, more than it is anything else. It's hard to imagine if they do very poor sales in Dayton that the con's going to survive through all of this unless somebody buys the convention that has deep pockets. To me, and I know he's not the most popular guy in the world either, but the guy that owns Anime Midwest and Anime Minneapolis, easy for me to say, would be a logical purchaser, even though, like I said, I know there's certainly some thoughts about him in the community, but at least they've got a history of being able to put on conventions, and you can basically let this person kind of take over, bring it into the fold, and try to salvage it. If they just pass it on to somebody else that's kind of in their inner circle, which is, I hate to say, I think that's what's going to happen, but you just wonder, because here's the other issue. We've talked about it briefly, and this is me as a financial person kind of getting into the financial side to it. If Ohayocon as an entity is a for-profit, it also means they could have debts and probably do have debts. Some of that is normal. You work at a debt. You work at a deficit as you build up to your convention. You make your money at the convention. You get back into the green, and then you work back into a deficit again. It's just the way it works.
There's reason to believe they didn't do that with 2024's Ohayocon.
There is reason to believe that without knowing for sure. But if you have debts, you have to sell those debts too. That's part of the Ohayocon thing, unless and I know this is a small business owner myself, sometimes you put those debts on your personal self instead of on the business because you're so small. Now, Ohayocon has been around for a long time. Shouldn't be in a situation where they would have to do that. So if those debts aren't personal debts, if those are debts in the name of the business, when you sell the business, those debts have to go with, which means you have to find somebody who's willing to buy that debt and assume that debt for you. And, is that something that can happen this quickly? Because they kind of make it sound like they're doing this very soon. And that stuff takes time. There's legal ramifications.
That's a weird one.
Yeah.
Thinking about, I'm going to purchase an anime convention a month before it runs.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why you just can't help but think it's one of two things. And again, maybe it is completely above board. Maybe she's been working on selling it for months. Maybe this is part of the process that because it would take several months probably to go through all the legalities of that situation. So let's assume that is possibility number one, that she's been working behind the scenes to sell it. And that's why these rumors are in and out, but you can't actually confirm them because there's not pen to paper. Number two is you sell it to somebody that basically keeps you there, and you with the guarantee like, hey, I'll take care of the debts, or we'll take care of them through Ohayocon, but I just need my name off this thing to lay low and get out the heat. The third one is there's not going to be a legal sale, that they will name somebody the owner of the convention and that she will still own the convention. And because these people are far more rabid about it than we are, people will figure that out if that happens. And that'll be the end of Ohayocon and probably the end of them having any chance of running a convention again. So you hope it's the first. Like, you hope it's a situation where that's just a process has been going on, which is why these, she's leaving, she's stepping aside, all this stuff, without actually being able to say it's official, because it's not until it's all signed and dealt with. But it is a weird time to do it because, like you said, con's in a month. Like, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen still to make this convention happen. And there's just a lot of work that goes into the final month of con prep, whether it's, getting final guests signed, making sure all your contracts are ready to go, making sure because they still have to supposedly contract a shuttle service to get people to and from the convention. So I don't know if we'll ever have definitive answers. I'll be curious to see what happens in the next couple weeks, because stuff's going to have to happen pretty quickly. And I'm curious to get an idea of how many people are attending this thing, because it's very expensive for a con that so far, even if I had no tie to Ohayocon, like Chris, it's, if the weather's anything like it is outside today here in Ohio, you absolutely gonna need that. I can't help but think that this con's in serious trouble, and I don't know. The whole thing is I'm just kind of blown away by how they can just almost take the wrong step at every step of the way. And you just, again, I have no ties to the people involved, but as someone who just emotionally wants Ohayocon, the con to get through it, you almost want to be like, man, just bring me in. I will tell you what to do, because you need somebody to tell you.
You need some sort of consultant of some variety.
Some adult in the room to just say, look, this is not the thing to do. That's not the thing to do. Here's what you need to do. And I don't know, maybe they'll listen to our podcast and get some ideas, because I feel like we've got some good ideas.
I think what it comes down to is your hatred toward the people who left, the volunteers that went on to do their own thing, and your enjoyment of hanging out with voice actors and people within the industry. Those can't be stronger than your desire to put on a good show for the people who pay to attend it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, and with the reactions they've had and their response to all of this, those people kind of get forgotten about. Like, for us, just regular people who want to attend a convention and have a good time, you owe all this to us, not so much the industry or the volunteers that you're angry at. You got to give me some sort of indication that if I put money into this, I'm going to have a good time.
Yeah, because I think of it like Otakon, where, you pay your badge for Otakon. And I think Anime Expo is the same way, and you become a Otacorp member. Like, you're buying membership into that convention because you are making that convention happen. I feel like that sentiment has been lost here, that it's the con goers who actually own the convention. They're the ones that are basically backing this thing and saying, I want this to happen so I can go have a good time for a weekend. And yet they seem to be, I don't want to say back of mind, because they have announced guests, so they're maybe middle of mind, but I think some of the stuff really could have been fixed. And my fear is, and this was kind of my fear during the summer, and then they made some changes, and I thought, well, maybe my fears are not accurate, but my fears is they're still kind of in the situation that they're kind of hoping they can get through the convention in January, and some of this will just blow over, and
Yeah.
people will just forget. And maybe, I don't know. Like, I think that was the plan last year, and it didn't really work because the con didn't go very well. Now you've moved it to Dayton, and people's expectations are already a little bit lower. And what if we have a snowstorm in January? Because that can
Very
happen.
possible.
I have driven through snow to get to Ohayocon, and Dayton, with hotels not attached, that's going to be even worse. Like, I don't know. Like, the whole thing is mind blowing. We'll certainly keep an eye on it because there will be more news. And I apologize to people who don't like to hear us spend 20 minutes. And Chris, mentions the thing about supposedly they still owe money. And again, that's part of those debts that if you do have debts, those have to be assumed by the new owner. And so, yeah, there's lots of questions. And for as much as transparency has been talked about, there have been very few answers. And I think that's the most alarming thing for someone like us who will willingly go to conventions, even if we're not super excited about the guests, because we enjoy anime conventions.
Yeah.
So we're not asking you to be Animazement. We just want you to be a little better version of Ohayocon than the last time we went. So,
well, the problem is that Ohayocon doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Because Ohayocon to me was an annual convention held at the Hyatt Regency in Greater Columbus Convention Center in January or February every year. You've taken away a good portion of what the appeal of that convention was.
Yeah. For sure.
I don't know what the Dayton Convention Center has to offer. I assume it's probably not as bad as what the internet would lead you to believe, especially once they're finished with all the renovations to it. But what I think of as Ohayocon still goes back to Columbus and being up there and chicken and eggs and heroes and games and all of that. Like
Mikey's late night slice.
Absolutely. Like these are things that you just can't replicate no matter where you hold it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, whether they end up back in Columbus, I don't know. But that is a big part of it. So again, we're going to probably be talking about this more over the next 6 weeks. So apologies to those who aren't super excited about it. They are home of the chicken basket, although their breakfast is really the best meal there. If that's your tip for going up there, stop the chicken and eggs, get their breakfast. Their breakfast is, for your money, you're getting a good portion and flavorful breakfast for what you're getting. But again, it's something we're going to be talking about as someone, as people who've gone to Ohayocon many years. It is news to us, and I think a lot of other people too. So we'll continue to bring that topic up. A couple other small news stories before we get to the music on the Twitch version of this podcast. And interesting news, and the trailer is available. So I'm going to go ahead and share the Anime News Network story on this so people who want to check out the trailer can do that. New Gundam show coming out. That was announced at Gundam Conference Winter 2024. That Studios Kara, I believe it's pronounced, and Sunrise are producing the Mobile Suit Gundam G-Quax series, which is spelled GQUUUUUUX.
6 U's.
6 U's. There will be overseas information on the English version of the teaser trailer, but it is definitely has an Evangelion vibe to it for sure. But at the same time, we saw the picture of the Gunpla. It looks pretty cool. And obviously, with Sunrise and Studio Kara involved, it's something that could be really interesting. It'll be coming to theaters in Japan in January. And then I think episodes will start soon thereafter. But I know you've seen the trailer, Mike. Just some initial thoughts on this.
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear what people are saying once it's premiered, because this is definitely curious to me. Character designs are different. Illustrator Take is the guy doing the character designs. He worked on Pokemon Sun and Moon, which is kind of interesting because one of the characters, Neon, looks like one of the more recent Pokemon rivals from the video game. So that's kind of interesting. I didn't think Shuji looked much like a main Gundam protagonist. I thought that was kind of a different look, but we'll see how that plays out. And, following things like the Gundam subreddit and all that, I think there's a lot of concern, maybe, if not skepticism or curiosity, with Hideaki Anno involved, that people are really worried that the Gundams aren't going to be mecha. They're going to be something more than that this time around. Like that, and the design would almost lend to that fear or skepticism. So yeah, the animation looks really good. I'll be anxious to hear what people are saying about it.
I mean, let's be real. I mean, how far are we really removed when you compare like Shinji's Eva and the Zero system? Like those are pretty similar concepts when it comes right down to it. So I don't know if they were ever as far apart maybe as some Gundam fans would honestly admit, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. It certainly looks interesting. I have no idea what it's going to be, but I think anything, with these big of names involved is certainly going to get everybody's attention. Yeah. Being directed by Kazuya Tsurumaki, who did Fully Cooley and Gunbuster 2 Die Buster. So those are obviously big shows. Yoji Enokido is supervising, who did Bungo Stray Dogs, Sailor Moon Super S, Revolutionary Girl Utena, Ouran High School Host Club. So what a wild series of shows that is, as I read it off.
It's strange combination.
For sure. But I mean, all big shows, all very popular shows. So going to be really interesting. So I'm curious to see when the reviews start coming in and we find out where we're going to be able to watch that. Probably be interested in checking out a few episodes of that, see if it's going to be any good. Last news item of the day, finally, and we've mentioned this a few times, so definitely worth kind of bringing up that the news is finally broken that the Dragon Ball DAIMA English dub will be premiering on Crunchyroll starting January 10th. A lot of your favorite voice actors are back, and a lot of new voice actors, obviously, for some of the mini characters, but probably the most notable return is Stephanie Nadolny, who will be returning as Mini Goku. And obviously, she's been out of the series for many, many years, but was super popular, of course, in the original Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball GT. I believe she was still voicing Goku in that as well. And now will be coming back again. I think fans are really excited about that. It is interesting it's taken this long to get the dub out. I think you're going to be probably through 13 or 14 episodes of the subtitle version by the time the dub finally debuts. But it does make you wonder if a little more care is going into this dub because it is Dragon Ball and there's probably a lot of money in it. Also, a lot of characters to dub. So interesting it's taken this long, but exciting that it's finally coming around the corner.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting to hear that it was going to premiere on Adult Swim or something like that and as well. And that's why it was taking that long. But yeah, definitely cool to see Stephanie Nadolny come back. Classic voice as far as like the original Dragon Ball goes. Yeah, I was really wondering. I pull up Crunchyroll every day and keep checking there and seeing only the subtitled episodes. So I was really kind of curious to see when that was going to show up. So now we have our answer, January 10th.
Yeah, so better late than never. Definitely check that out on Crunchyroll and keep your eyes open because it wouldn't shock me to see it show up on Adult Swim or on Toonami,
whatever they call it these days.
Yeah, so or somewhere else possibly. Who knows in this interesting.
My concern was that the dub was going to end up being like somehow exclusive to Disney Plus or something stupid like that.
Evidently, Crunchyroll / Funimation still has their hands on the Dragon Ball universe to the point where that wasn't going to happen. So certainly, Dragon Ball fans can be excited. Although a lot of them may already be watching subtitle version, which is 8 or 9 episodes in, I think already. I think you can catch that on Crunchyroll as well. So for those of you watching on YouTube or watching or listening on the podcast network, we'll be jumping ahead to the end of the episode here shortly. We will, of course, direct you to twitch.tv/Nerdcast Empire to catch the rest of this episode, at least whatever makes it through without being muted. And we're going to talk about some more of our favorite anime themes. And again, remind you to join us again Sunday night for Music Weekly coming up. But again, join us live. That's the best chance. Anytime we do music on the stream, the best chance to get to hear it is always live on twitch.tv/Nerdcast Empire. So for those of you on YouTube or on the podcast network, we will talk to you in a moment when we wrap up the episode. So if you're rejoining us on the podcast network or on YouTube's VOD, we're just about ready to bring this episode to a close this week. We appreciate everybody joining us for another episode of the Nerdcast Empire. Of course, we talked anime news, including a lot about Ohayocon again, unfortunately. We also, on the Twitch version, listen to some of our favorite anime themes. So if you're on the podcast, if you're on the YouTube, go over to twitch.tv/Nerdcast Empire. See how many of those songs get muted on the VOD. It's always a game to see how many of those are going to make it through, but who knows? But we'll do this again. Probably we get into early 2025 with our next edition of this. A reminder, coming up Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, another episode of Music Weekly. It is the music of November the 22nd coming up. And I believe that will be the correct time because I'm pretty sure the NXT pay-per-view is on Saturday. Double check that real quick while we wrap this up. It is Saturday, so yep, we'll be right on time Sunday night for another episode of Music Weekly. And then next Thursday, we'll be back with another episode of Anime Thursdays. And I think we're going to do some holiday guides for you. We're going to talk about some of the best things from 2024, some of the best video games, the best anime. Mike's watched a ton of anime. He's also got a lot of stuff on the video game list. And we'll also go through some of the sales that are running with the Crunchyroll store and Sensei Filmworks and try to pick out some shows maybe you need to pick up for the cheap this holiday season. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support. Big thanks to Chris for holding down the chat. Big thanks to Mike, as always, for joining me in studio. And a big thanks to you, the listener, for joining us each and every time on the Nerdcast Empire. But that's going to wrap things up. For the entire crew, I'm Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.